What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. So much for taking the weekend off. As apparently, while we slept, Donald Trump and Delta Force went into Venezuela and plucked their leader from his home in the middle of the night and flew off. Apparently, you can't just do things. In this military action, there were 0 American casualties. There were some on Venezuela's side, I'm told, but the reaction has been very interesting. So obviously some people are upset, I think reasonably so, for feeling like, hey, this really isn't an America first thing. Like, we can liberate Venezuela, but we can't liberate Minnesota. I get that energy 100%. And then there's also the reaction of people who are looking at the Venezuelan people who are celebrating today, who are viewing this as getting out of a brutal dictatorship. So I've got some takes from like Tim Pool and from people in Venezuela about the situation to share with you. For me, this is about as good as a war as I would be willing to accept. Saying like, I'm not an interventionalist. I don't want wars. I don't want to be going into Iran. I don't want to be going into these other countries. I want to focus on America. But if I had to deal with it, this is kind of the way. I mean, no U.S. casualties, 11 minutes, war's over, essentially. The only people really loudly speaking out against this are Democrats and communists. The people who live in Venezuela, where 1/3 of their population has had to flee this guy and his rule, they are reacting very different than upper middle class white fake commies in America. You see this article here. Trump shares humiliating photo of Maduro in tracksuit with his eyes and ears covered and says Venezuelan president's wife will also be charged. Donald Trump has shared an undignified photo. By the way, this is Maduro like a month ago telling Trump to bring it on. You know, Maduro is talking a lot of ish. Here he is, Maduro, come for me. I am waiting for you, you coward. Yeah. And we did. And I mean, there is a great Trump quote too. Listen to this.
Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What could we do in order to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States.
I mean, look, is this about removing a brutal dictator and, drug runner who was providing, military protection for drug running boats and the cartels? Sure. Is it as simple as that? Of course not. Venezuela currently has the world's largest oil reserves, and it's not even close. 303 billion barrels of oil. Iran has the second most oil. So it's not a coincidence that there are regime changes going on in Venezuela and Iran, I don't think. Now, I don't live in Venezuela, but here is somebody who is Venezuelan, and here is Venezuela right now this morning. I mean, here's historic celebratory development. Millions of Venezuelans are jubilantly celebrating as socialism's grip ends after decades of oppression. The Maduro regime has collapsed in a U.S.-led operation, freeing millions from hyperinflation, starvation, and narco-terrorism. Right? Now, obviously, there are people here, Hodgson, saying, can we rescue Americans in America before we worry about Iran? It's impossible to disagree with that. I agree with that. I feel like this is the best of a situation I would have rather not been involved in. Is that a cope? I guess maybe that's a cope, but also understand that this is very strategic for the United States and its oil supply. But here's a Venezuelan. I won't share the entire video, but Look, this is a Venezuelan talking.
Okay. As a Venezuelan American, I got some shit to say. My family, my parents, my sister, my extended family, all lost everything. Their work, their savings, their investments, gone. Wiped out by a narco dictatorship that has held Venezuela in a death grip for over 25 years. And what happened to my family has happened to millions. And yes,
I think
millions.
a third of their population is
The Venezuelan exodus is the second largest displacement crisis on earth after Syria. This is not just a tragedy. It is one of the great humanitarian disasters of our time. But the suffering doesn't end there. This regime has jailed hundreds of political prisoners. Thousands have been murdered simply for speaking out. More than a third of the population has fled. 1/3. Not for better opportunities or for the American dream, but to survive, to live, because staying often means death. And while the world may see Venezuela as a collapsed state, what it is in reality is an occupied one. Our territory, our natural resources, and our institutions have been overrun by hostile foreign powers.
Yeah, well, it is now, too.
Iranian militias, Chinese corporations, Russian intelligence, all exploiting our country with impunity. Venezuela is no longer...
By the way, this is now what the United States is going to do. I just want to be clear. That's the bigger picture here. We don't just do anything to like, oh, this is crappy. They have a crappy leader. There's a lot of countries with crappy leaders. There's just not a lot of countries with the strategic value of Venezuela. So if we can bring democracy while also securing the world's largest oil reserve, that's what the United States is going to do. That's why it invaded Iraq. That's why it's going to invade Iran probably, or look for a regime change there, so that they can strategically obtain better access to those countries before other countries do it. If you don't think that China and other nations not friendly to the United States are doing the same thing, I mean, you're not paying attention. That doesn't mean I agree with it, but this was probably about, look, we're going to move in. We're going to take care of these resources. It's going to be great for Americans. We're going to get access to oil. We're going to get the cartels out of there so the drugs aren't pouring into the United States. This is as close to a win-win as you could possibly get. 0 U.S. soldiers die. That's today. Historically, regime changes, the United States record on regime changes has not been good.
Just a local crisis. It is now a geopolitical threat that endangers the entire Western Hemisphere. It has become a launch pad for an authoritarian expansion in the Americas. And in the midst of all of this, one woman has dared to lead the charge for freedom.
She got Nobel Peace
Maria
Prize.
Corina Machado. In 2024, against every odd, she led a peaceful democratic uprising that won the election. Her team smuggled physical voting receipts out of the country, hard proof of victory that the regime tried to bury. Her courage has lit a fire in the hearts of millions of Venezuelans desperate to believe that change is still possible. But now some have...
The people there are celebrating. Here's Maria Machado saying, Venezuelans, the hour of freedom has arrived. This is a tweet that has 300,000 likes and not a lot of people pushing back against it. Right? The struggle you were supposed to lead was peaceful and democratic. Applauding an invasion of your homeland delegitimizes your discourse. Me. One could be anti-Maduro and anti-Yankee invasion at the same time. Sure. I think that, look, let's be clear. The United States is going to benefit from this. This is not going to be, exactly. This is not going to be, it's not solely about freeing people. It never is. That's an idealistic thing. That's something that, the government uses to fool normies. Tim says Venezuela is better off. I mean, we don't know that yet, but here's the thing. Sometimes change, we know what had been the case. You know, what did y'all think the Monroe Doctrine meant? Vibes, papers, and essays? This is about restoring the Monroe Doctrine. You know, North America, South America, you know, this is definitely what that was about, you know, and I think while I do not support, you know, our government's witchy ways, destabilizing places, you know, regime change, you're going to see the people of Iran right now are in the streets. They want regime change. I mean, if you don't think the Trump administration is behind that, I mean, I got something else for you. You know, I got a bridge to sell you. But, you know, how this will all shake out, only time will tell. Just because previous regime change attempts have not worked out well, that does not mean this one won't either. But I do hear the people who are saying, hey, you know, this is great and all, but, you know, they don't see this as America first. Now, if you think that if you don't think that getting the strategic, you know, military advantage here in Venezuela isn't good for America, well, that's crazy. It's great for America. Getting access, you know, securing that oil is great for America. Cutting off the drugs that are killing people in America is great for America. Yeah, all of these things can still be America first, but, you know, people are less pumped about it because they want more change in America, which I understand. You know, right now, obviously, Iran is probably very, very concerned. Iraq trending, you know, all I can go by is what the Venezuelan people are saying, and they seem to be celebrating this. You know, and that seems good. Less drugs in America seems good. Securing the world's largest oil reserves seems good. You know, moving to strategically get China out of these places and places like the canal, the Suez Canal, all this kind of stuff seems good for America. You can do more than one thing at one time. And this just seems like, you know, good old fashioned American kick-ass to make sure that, you know, everything stays in, you know, again, people who don't like Trump are going to say Venezuela has been liberated, just like Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq were liberated. The CIA staged another hostile takeover of a country at the behest of globalist psychopaths. Maybe that's true. You know, Maduro was trafficking drugs, and then everything with a lot of these people just always goes back to Israel. Zionists, so Israel. Okay, well, how about the drugs that we know they were trafficking? Like, not everything in the world is about Israel. You know, actual Venezuelans are crying in the street happy. Thank you, God, she says. I knelt and cried for him. Should be capitalized. They got American flags. They got, you know, it's not a regime change when the president-elect won legitimately and has been unable to take power due to dictatorship. That's also true. She won the election and they have refused to give power to her. So I don't think every situation is as simple as, you know, Israel. This particular case is very different than Iraq or Iran. Although oil makes it kind of the same. There is nuance out there. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. My take on it is cautiously optimistic / it could have been worse / this is probably good for America in the long term. But maybe if I'm wrong, educate me. I hope you were informed by this video. If you were, please do make sure you have a like on it and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an update. We'll talk to you again real soon.